1950s Ford shoebox drag car that is set up for the street as well. I've got to drive by this thing several times a day. My friend Chuck Callis has it out for sale. There's a gentleman he's selling it for $12,500. If you're interested, let me know. The exciting part about this thing is what we have back here. Look at those slicks, and the power is sent by a Ford big block. So this thing is ready to go. Old school drag car, very cool. A lot of times you'll see these hot rods and they will look the business, but they won't have any power behind it. And so it's really important to know what's going on under the hood. And so in our devotional this morning, we see that we continue on this idea of God's covenant with Abraham. And he says this in 17:10 of the book of Genesis: "This is my covenant which ye shall keep between me and you and the seed after you. Every man-child among you shall be circumcised." And he goes on in 11, he says, "This circumcision, the flesh of your foreskins, shall be a token of the covenant between me and you." And then he goes on and he develops what that looks like. But what I find extremely interesting is if you fast forward into the New Testament, Paul tells those in Corinth in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 19, he says, "Circumcision is nothing and uncircumcision is nothing, but the keeping of the commandment of God." And so what he's trying to say is, this is not a thing to where it is by works. Now, did he change things in the New Testament? Oh no, this was recorded even back into Deuteronomy. In Deuteronomy 30, verse 6, he says, "And the Lord God will circumcise thine heart." And so even though you see there was a physical manifestation on the outside, there was something that was supposed to be happening on the inside. Jeremiah 4:4 says this as well: "Circumcise yourselves unto the Lord and take away the foreskin of your heart." Now when you think this thing through, you begin to realize that this is really important. This obviously was a health issue, and if in fact this didn't happen, there was a continual cleaning that had to happen, and infection was going to happen. Now, this cutting away of the flesh created a situation where an individual was clean, and he's talking about how that parallels the heart, and there's that cutting away of the flesh. That's why when you go over to Galatians chapter 5 and you see this contrast between the works of the flesh and the fruit of the Spirit, you see that for a child of God, we are to get rid of all of those things of the flesh. Now this is what he says: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, variances, emulations, strifes, seditions, envyings, murders, revelings. All of these things, you see, are things that we've got to get away from our heart. Our world is incredibly sensual. It is very fleshly, and that is unfortunately been brought into many churches. And so if you've got that going on in the church, it is completely unclean, and you can see how the Spirit cannot operate in that kind of environment. And so we need to be circumcised of the heart. We need to put away the things of the flesh. We need to die unto the flesh so that the Lord truly can reign in our lives, in our churches, in our world. So you can see how important that is. So really, what happens where you can't see manifest where you can see. So the hidden man of the heart is so important. This is why we see in Deuteronomy 6, he's telling the nation of Israel to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, mind, and soul. And so we have got to completely change that. That's why oftentimes you see cars like this, you see, oh, they took out the old flathead and it's had a heart transplant. And they use that terminology because that's what really matters about all of this. All the fancy paint, all the wheels, all of that doesn't matter if it doesn't have the right heart in it. And that's what that transplant was all about. This one just happens to have a big heart. Do you have a big heart for the Lord? Is your heart completely given over to Him? I hope that it is. May God richly bless you. Thank you for listening in and subscribing to these. Give your heart over to the Lord.